Well, hi and welcome to Street Photography Unscripted with Mark and
Flavio.
So today we're going to talk about street photography and street photography in particular for beginners.
Yes, I think we can start with, we'll ask a few questions to each other and see what we think about the main advice that we would give to a new street photographer, how to start, what to do to look for the subject, etc. I think that's a good place to start.
I'm glad you said ask each other some questions because that's kind of what it's about. That's why it's two
Yes.
people on a sofa asking each other questions.
I thought it was just discussing stuff.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so we would say that for a beginner we would start with, where would you start for a beginner?
Well, I think the most important thing, obviously, everyone asks us at the beginning is two questions. First one is, am I allowed to photograph on the street?
Yeah.
And the real answer to that is nice and simple, is yes, you are. You're allowed to photograph anywhere on the street.
Well, it's in this country.
Yeah, this is in this country I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the rest of the world. Everywhere is kind of different. But in this particular country, you can photograph wherever you like. You can photograph whoever you like, as long as it's in a public space. If it's in a private space, it's a whole different ball game. But then the next question we always get asked is gear.
Yeah. And gear, in reality, let's keep it simple. You know, most of photographers have the gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
We tend to have a passion for the gadget, the new thing, etc. But in reality, we don't need anything particularly advanced. We just need one camera, one lens, and we always tend to advise people to get a prime lens, because you start learning your framing, you start learning before even you take you put the camera to your eye, more or less what's going to be in the frame, so you can position yourself, move, zooming with your feet. A camera battery, a spare battery, your SD card, of course, and that's enough to shoot street photography. You don't need anything more.
Absolutely. I mean, I go out with a small Sony camera, a 35mm lens, just a 35mm f2.8 lens. It's nothing fancy. What do you go out with, Flavio?
I go with a Sony camera as well, a 50mm lens, and that's it.
Okay.
Myself, yeah.
Cool. So you've got your gear. You're going out there for the first time. What do you think one of the first things you should go and look for on the street?
Probably your subject. What would you look for as a subject?
Me, I mean, I'd actually go back before that, Flavio, and I'd say, you know, I want to kind of look for my stage, find out sort of, where I'm going to be photographing. And I think we've crossed over there a little bit, but, it doesn't matter. It's just unscripted. So,
yes.
But yeah, I think maybe let's talk about the subject first. So, how would you find your subject?
Well, the subject is, in reality, street photography is candid photography shot on in public places. Candid means that you will have a sentient being and not being camera aware, probably.
Sure.
So we tend to shoot people. We tend to prefer to have people in our shots. Otherwise, it gets to be urban landscape rather than street photography.
Yeah.
And a subject can be anything that draws your eye, really. It's anything that gets your curiosity going, your interest going. So the idea is to find something that you're interested in and you would like to photograph. From there on, you need to make the photograph interesting. So how do you go about that?
Well, I think just sticking on the subject thing, I don't think it necessarily just needs to be a person. I mean, if you look at one of the greatest street photographers around, Elliot Irwin, Elliot always seemed to have an animal in his picture, and I must admit,
and he's famous for his dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I love the term. I quite often use it when I'm on the street photography courses in India. I think a picture always sort of adds an element when it's got a random dog in it.
Yeah,
and
true.
They're easy to find in India. But I think it could be kind of whatever you want, but it has to have a subject in it.
Yeah.
And that subject could be pet, animal, person, whatever. It's not just, as you said, an urban landscape. But I think after that, the thing to do is you want to find your background. And I think the mistake a lot of people make is they just walk and walk and walk, and they're waiting for this great image to appear before them, and it never really does. I mean, you can go out and hunt, and there are photographers that do that, but I think the best way to start, and even for someone like myself who's been doing it for donkey's years, I still find I get the best results if I choose a great location, which I call my stage or my studio, and I wait for the right person to come into that. And you could be waiting there 10, 15, 20 minutes, and there could be lots of wrong people coming past who are not quite what you're looking for. But if you wait there and you've got the right background and you've got your camera set, everything's ready for you, when that person does enter your frame, you can just shoot hard. Edit hard when you get home, but you can shoot hard because you.
And by shooting hard, you mean shoot a lot. Try to really work the frame. Try to really work the image. Don't just click once and say I'm done and walk away. Just work it out.
I would absolutely encourage someone to stay with the moment as long as possible, and I don't think it's spray and praying, because you're not just praying that you're going to get something good. You've actually taken a lot of the elements out by securing this great location, and then you're waiting for this person to come in, these elements to come together with 2 or 3 people. But once they do come in, shoot the hell out of it, because to get that decisive moment in one frame is very difficult. And certainly don't start chimping. I see it a lot where people take one image and then they look at the back of their camera,
and then you just think the image is just completely gone.
Yeah, or you actually just think, look, there's a better image happening now. And you're looking and admiring the picture you've taken, and something better's happened. So, and you've waited 20 minutes for this image to happen. So why not stay with it for 2 or 3 minutes until it goes, and shoot the hell out of it? Shoot it from a slightly different angle. Shoot it from high. Shoot it from low. Wait till someone else comes in the frame or walks past it to add something else, another element into it. But stay with the moment until it ends.
Yeah, absolutely. And where would you start looking for your stage, as you call it?
I mean, looking for a stage is something that you get with experience, but I look for sort of nice coloured walls as a starting, or posters. What sort of things do you look for?
I think, again, it's backgrounds. Background is my stage normally, and it can be a very interesting graphic background with some windows or colours or doors that are interesting, or some kind of layered kind of background. But certainly we would like to start from a crowded place in any case, because if you find the best background in the world but it's a deserted place, it's going to be really difficult to find a subject to shoot in that background.
Sure. I think crowded spaces are really good for doing street photography and also getting your confidence up as a beginner, because generally if you look for these crowded spaces, and I think with beginners I'd even take it back a stage further and just say look for events and things that are going on, and that could be a carnival, it could be a food festival or any type of festival, it could be a religious ceremony, or many other sort of things where people are going about what they're doing or what they're into, and so they're actually fixated on what they're doing rather than you with the camera, and so it enables you to get that little bit closer and capture what's going on without them really sort of caring, because they're doing their own thing. Whereas purely going out on the street and looking for that, it can be a little bit more difficult. Not saying it's impossible, but I would start easing yourself in with looking for these crowded places around events.
Yeah, and coming back to what you were saying, just finding your stage and staying there for a while, especially if you find somebody that is doing their own thing. When you stay there and you stay there for long enough, and maybe they just acknowledge you and see that you're there with a camera, with a smile, and just staying there, and maybe just nodding to let them know that you're taking pictures. If you just stay there and work your frame, they will forget about you and just go about their business, and it's a much better way to even shoot, because they will just completely ignore you.
I totally agree. I mean, I don't see a problem if you're staying in a place sometime, and particularly at an event, and if someone sees you there, I don't think there's anything wrong with talking to them or having a discussion with them or saying hello and smiling, or even saying, look, this is what I'm doing. Because you know what, they're there to do something totally different. They then accept that you are there. I mean, if they say we don't want our photograph taken, just move on and find something else, because there's a million things out there to photograph. But if they accept you, they then get on with their whatever they're doing, and then you get even more natural moments, and you're staying there, and you're this thing that Robert Capa says, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough.
Yes.
You're getting really close, both physically, and you've also got close to the client or the subject, because they now feel comfortable with you being in their space, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
But when you're out and about and you're looking for all these things, when do you think, or how do you know that you've got this right moment? When the sort of the peak of the photograph, so to speak, the decisive moment, because it certainly goes up, and there's that key point of the gesture.
I would say it depends a little bit on the picture. If you're looking for something that has more of a graphical quality, it's the positioning of the different subject on the frame, trying to get a little bit of distance between the subjects, that they don't superimpose each other, getting them in the right place against the background so they can actually be coming out of the background. A good idea for the timing, especially for the beginners, is just to try to get the stride of the person walking. That is a nice V, and it's a good idea to train yourself into timing your shot for that stride. But then, of course, that stride doesn't mean that they're going to be exactly in the right place. Absolutely. So things have to come together. For the gesture itself, when we are talking about people that are interacting or they are doing something specific rather than just walking about, that is when is the moment that explains what they are doing. It's something that you see a much better interaction with two people. Instead of just talking, they start gesturing, or they are exchanging something, an object indicating something, or an interesting position of the hands. It can be the expression when they are starting to get more emphatic with their expression. I think this is what is the best thing to look for, or the person in the market or doing their own thing when they actually are interacting with their merchandise or with the client itself. I think this is how you look for a good moment.
Yeah, there's some really good points there, and it's amazing when we look at someone videoing something. Video is very forgiving, and the reason I say that is because when you're trying to take a photograph and get a decisive moment, it's like the two of us talking here now. We're not looking at each other and gazing into each other's eyes, as much as I'd love to, Flavio. But seriously, we don't look into each other's eyes all the time, because it's hugely uncomfortable to another person. But if I'm not looking at you when I'm talking, and you catch that moment when I'm looking somewhere else, it actually looks like you're totally disinterested in that person. Whereas, in reality, you're not. It's just human life.
Yeah.
So you need to, as a photographer, watch for that moment where the two people are totally engaged with each other. So there's kind of the eyes looking at each other, and then secondly, to take it to another level, if there's some hand movements. So if I'm going like this and looking at each other, looking at you, it goes to another level, rather than sort of me looking here and you looking there, and it looks like we're totally disinterested in each other.
Yeah.
And I find it. If you want to practice this sort of thing, great place. Just go somewhere like a cafe or a coffee shop and just people watch, and you'll be amazed at the interactions if you just watch people from a distance and just think, that's when I take the picture. Just like that's when I take the picture, and you'll see these two people interacting with each other, and probably say 90% of the time they're actually not looking at each other. Excuse me, they're not looking at each other. But when they do, and the hand movements come, or a cup of coffee comes up, and someone says something else, just go, that's my moment, and you'll soon start getting used to this. You'll just see it, bang, bang, and I think I know with yourself. I mean, I know certainly myself. I see these moments, and I go, bang, I know it's happening, but that's just this thing of years and years of practice, and practice makes perfect. I don't know what's your thoughts?
I think just taking it from these people watching, I think it's a great way of practicing your eye and practicing your timing, because I think it's a bit of a curse in one way, but a blessing in the other way for us photographers. Now, no matter if we have a camera in hand or not, we always frame, we always look for images, we always imagine how it would be, how we would take it, what we would exclude, what we would include in the image, how we would frame it. And that is something that is trained in our mind all the time without interruption. And it's not something, it's not a chore, it's automatic.
Sure.
And the people watching thing could be a start for doing these things. The first thing that you do, you just sit yourself there, start looking at, for example, an interesting couple that are interacting. And even before thinking about the moment, start thinking about how would I frame them? Is that pole coming out of their head something that I could eliminate? Is that I could position myself a little bit better to see the face better, and just move this way and then start looking for those moments.
Absolutely. I think this is, sort of almost we're taking it to another level now where you've got to start, you've chosen your background and now you've got to start watching it as well as the thing. But I really hope today, this 4 or 5 little tips you've got something from, and we'll certainly go into a lot more depth in another video in the future. But thanks a lot for watching. And really hope to see you again soon. We'd love to hear some comments from you, so
please subscribe
below. And thank you very much. Any final words from yourself, Flavio?
I'd say give us a thumbs up if you'd like to see more, because YouTube actually looks at thumbs ups and subscribe patterns to give us a little bit more visibility. And I'd say thanks for watching from Flavio
and Mark. Goodbye.
Goodbye.